Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Growing with my fellow growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first this week to Spartan Grow.
Thank you, Jack. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word with no spaces. Otherwise, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com, and I'll help you with all of your lighting or growing questions.
Always happy to have you back. And next up with us, we've got Brandon Russ.
What's going on, everybody? Brandon Rust here. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. You can find me on Instagram at rust.brandon. You can also go to bokashiearthworks.net and check out all the blog post stuff. You can get humate fertilizers, microbes, all kinds of good stuff there.
We are happy to have you back. Next up, we've got Noah, the grower.
Hello, everybody. I'm Noah the Grow on Instagram. You can find me there, and happy to be here.
Happy to have you back. And last and certainly not least of our panelists who are currently with us is the American one.
Hello, Jack and panel and everyone in chat. I am the American one on YouTube and the American one underscore with underscore 18s on the IG. And yeah, I love the cannabis. I'm glad to be here today. And yeah, it's good to see everyone.
Good to be seen. I've got one of those viruses that's gone around for the past few years since 2019, and it got me on Wednesday. It's much more mild this time around. So if I sound a little bit different and a little low energy and not so focused, that's probably why. Maybe that's not too different from the typical week, though. So who knows? Who cares? We're back, and I'm curious. We had a scientific article that we sent a few weeks ago, but I think Matthew Gates was the one who sent it through the group chat. So I didn't necessarily want to review it if he wasn't here. And just looking back at that again, yeah, it is Cannabis Research
Hey,
Coalition teaming up with Glasshouse. That wasn't actually a research article. I think that was more of like a update. They're going to get into some research, and people were questioning the legitimacy of whether or not those types of groups are the ones that we want to be the ones doing the science and whether they should be involved or not. I do think that's a separate discussion, maybe for a separate time. As I look back at that, I thought it was more of just like a white paper or something. Oh, here we go. It might be an interesting white paper UV grow light. So we could look into that. I was also thinking we haven't done an open panel in a while, and last week we did Q&A, but we didn't open the panel up in the second hour, which I used to often do. I love seeing people's grows, and I know sometimes people are only here for the first hour, half hour, 10 minutes or whatever. So I'm thinking maybe we open up the panel today and get some new people on, new faces, new grows, and things like that. That's a fun one that I'm always interested in doing, and but at the same
I have a
time, it can
question.
bounce back and then not have anybody show up. So Tao, I will let
I
you
have a
go ahead and
question
ask
that
that
we could
question.
tackle quickly, I'm sure. But so where I'm at, I have this little I don't go over and visit them anymore because I don't want my neighbors seeing me all over them. But I got this little patch put in the backyard, and it got chilly. And I was wondering, I know we have a scoto period or a photo period, whatever way you want to look at it, plant that triggers the flower. But does cold temperatures have anything to do, especially with outdoor crops? I think it may have an influence. What do you guys think?
I think strictly from a survival standpoint that anything can cause a plant to begin to flower earlier from a stress standpoint. So if the plant thinks that it's going to die, you'll see this a lot with males, even like being a little bit root bound, it'll throw nanners or pollen sacs in veg. And so that tells me the cannabis plant is resilient and wants to survive and wants to pass on its genetics. So I'm curious if others have other thoughts on that, because I know just because it's possible doesn't mean it always happens. And at the same time, I think just getting cold in like certain regions is maybe not as much of a stress as like a plant being chopped in half or eaten by a deer or, like burnt in a fire or something like that, where it's like, oh God, like these other plants are dying. I need to do something to keep my reproductive abilities alive. So I'm curious if anybody else on the panel has thoughts for Tal on that one.
Silence.
Well, I don't know. I've never played with that, but I would look at it just like
Right.
Jane was like that. Cold it would be a stress, right? So, and generally that's not a positive response. Like it's generally doing something different than what the plant normally does. And so for me, maybe I can't identify if it's cold that's doing it, but all I know is that when I put it in the cold and it does that, it's probably not a good thing for me to do that, if that makes sense. But I mean, that's kind of how my brain looks at that. But no, I don't have a straight answer for you.
I think sometimes you don't have a choice with the nature of it being outside. It's just like some seasons are colder, some regions are colder, so you put it out at your best time in the summer, and then some stuff, I think Tao is kind of alluding to, snaps maybe into a little flower sooner, maybe because it's less cold resistant, or that cold shock brings it on sooner in certain cultivars, or maybe there's some other
Yeah,
underlying reason.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Exactly those things because it was chilly, but then again, it was chilly to me. Maybe the plants don't even really recognize that it's cold at all. So that could be
But
a thing.
but
And it could have
knowing
just been
that,
a fast flowering thing, like a
just
fast flowering
knowing,
plant.
I mean, unless it has some kind of ruderalis in it that's making it trigger in some way from
Mhm.
stress, I mean, it's not really how the cannabis that we know and love really reacts to,
Right.
you know what I mean? Usually
There
cold
could be
stress
a
coloring, but you don't usually get sex, you don't get it to show sex from cold. So for
yeah,
me, I would
yeah.
think is maybe it's popping out, maybe an old grandfather was a ruderalis or something, and it's because usually the only time that I have anything cannabis that reacts to like sexting like that for stress is males in small pots. I've seen that for sure,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
also in autoflowers. If you stress them out, then they'll flood. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's just a little bit of ruderalis in it.
Could be. Well, I don't know if it's happening. I was just wondering if that's a thing because um, I know other other plants might exhibit that trait.
There's, I think 2020 Mendocino has a strain called like Early Girl, and I know that Sensi Seeds even back in the day used to have like early flowering or fast flowering stuff that like would go into flower, like we're talking about, based on the photo period or scoto period change in the season, and it's not at 12-12. Some of them are 14, some of them are 13, some of them are really close to that 12-12 when they actually start to go flower, but some are much sooner, and they're not necessarily ruderalis because you can put them under 24-hour light or 18-hour light and they'll never flower indefinitely indoors. But something about the combination of being outdoor and maybe partially their genetic triggering window.
One of the things that I notice is it's not just the amount of light, but also the intensity. I know that I have plants in my backyard that got less less light. They got the same amount of light as everything else, but they got less intense light because of where they're positioned,
Yeah.
and they started to flower before everything else. So where there's like plants that have been shaded and stuff, those are the ones that are flowering faster than anything else.
And that makes sense. Yeah.
It's getting more dark time, like if there's shade or even just its sundown might be 10 or 15 minutes sooner than the other things or whatever because the whatever's causing shade will eventually block out its light to a great enough deal at a certain point in the day. But yeah, it's really interesting. Um, because I've seen on the indoor front, like when you have a plant that you don't give enough light, it might finish in like 10, 11 weeks or something like that. But then when you bring it up to like adequate light, it'll maybe finish in like 9 on the earlier end or 8.5, something like that. But that's also like everything else being proper and everything else being consistent. Outdoor, there's so, the angle of the sun, the intensity, like the DLI that we've talked about in the past. But that's really interesting, Brandon, that you see that. I've seen that with rosemary, just walking around the neighborhood. You'll see like a tree right next to a rosemary bush, and like the shade is on the center of that spot. And that's where it's flowering. And the rest of it is still in veg, which is kind of crazy. Like the whole center of the bush has bright blue flowers, but like the left side of it and the right side of it have just green vegging material. So I always found it kind of interesting when, where, and why exactly these different flowers bloom in different people's locales. So
No,
it's a good
one of
question,
the
Tom.
old one of the old cannabis books would preach about putting a bag over one of the branches, and it would sex that branch. This way, you know what the whole plant is.
Yeah, I think just a day or a couple days is enough to start to trigger that effect and allow you to have a better understanding of what the plant will be later on. A lot cheaper than sex testing, but also a little bit later. You're using a
Yeah,
lot
to
more
get a
soil.
plant that big is kind of ridiculous nowadays to sex it.
Really comes down to the goals and your setup. Because like if you have unlimited space, then I guess you can kind of get away with more. But if you're really space limited or time and
So, Brandon, you have a no plant count in Oklahoma, or is that there's new laws now?
I don't know what you're talking about.
he was asking, I think generally like, is there a plant count in Arizona? Are people able to grow
No,
unlimited
in
or
Oklahoma.
oh yeah,
It's a
Oklahoma, sorry.
unlimited plant count if you have a license,
Okay. Because wasn't there a point where like there was no plant count for any licenses that they were selling at one point at the beginning?
Yeah, there's still no plant count. No, it's not how it's structured out here. You can have unlimited plant count.
Damn.
It's funny because like really that's part of what can limit somebody, but it's square footage. It's your ability to execute on it. You could have 1 million square feet, but if you only have a team of 5 or something and not enough hands to get the work done, then you're going to use a quarter of the space, maybe, and then like you're gonna you're gonna run around like chickens with your heads cut off trying to fix problems left and right because you're not diligent enough at the whole place. You need to have a large enough team, but also uh, you know, make use of the space properly. Some people try and go big, big, big and end up not necessarily having good quality control. That's why you see a lot of IPM issues, whether it's pests, molds, mildews, or CFMs
No, wait,
creeping up.
wait. Oh, you need to have a license to have it, or can you just be a human above 21 and have no plant count?
No,
No, you need a license.
yeah.
Is there home grow? Like, what's the
How much? How much does that
capacity there?
license cost?
I think it's like 12 plants.
12 plants for the home grow. And then Tao was asking how much is the license for commercial?
You can't get one unless you buy one.
All right. So,
But like here in Michigan, for example, home grow, um, it's a misdemeanor unless for any amount of plants grown, any amount. And that just went to the Supreme Court, somebody who had a field and he won. So it is a misdemeanor. And so really, uh, I mean, you can say you have to have a license, but if you want to just pay a
if you
fine.
have, if you have money and a lawyer,
Everyone can
Yeah.
have a hemp
you can
license
do.
now because hemp, as long as it's not smoked, is all, even if it has 30% THCA, it's, you have to smoke it for that THCA to become THC. And so a lot of these people are just operating on hemp licenses in all 50 states and growing straight up cannabis and skirting that loophole, which is still open
For now.
for now. They're
But
they're attempting
yeah,
to rewrite that
I
bill.
wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't recommend
that's
anybody
it.
who's like who hasn't jumped on that to do it and
To
do it now.
start now, right? They're in the midst of fixing it
That
and
will be
probably over
yeah,
going overboard on the other direction.
Hey,
yeah,
you know what?
the
somewhere.
loophole will
I
be
was
fixed
advocate. I think we were all advocating that people grow before there was any legality. So I mean, fuck it.
Yeah, there you
Y'all
go.
are gonna
Good
do
point.
you. We're just here to
Good goal.
educate. Whatever levels and legalities you choose is all on your front, and I think that everybody knows and accepts those risks, and they'll move forward
Yeah, but I wouldn't
accordingly.
put my life savings into a hemp farm tomorrow. That's what I'm saying, basically.
No, nor would I. But I mean, I know that there's brands that are still getting into
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
space and things and doing that, and there are
Established places
small
have
and large, mom and pop
changed.
to big corporate, and it's an option, is all I'm saying. And you could ship it to all 50 states, and it's a people are doing it, whether
You
it's
know,
yeah.
just a sort of I'm not a plant count. Yeah,
Well,
I need
people
to
are
find
making all
that.
kinds of business decisions in all kinds of businesses. So
Find
just,
that
I mean,
reality.
You could point it to
I'd be a little
anything. Like
hesitant to jump in head foot into that myself too.
it's kind of like taxes, man. Like there are people that will pay literally zero in taxes, but it's because they paid an accountant $8 million to save them, the $10 million they would have had to pay in taxes. So they profit two million by not paying anything because they paid that accountant 8 million or whatever it is. And it's probably not that much or whatever, but in certain circumstances, that's how things are operated. And these laws, loopholes exist. Like it just depends on how much money you have for your attorneys and how hard you want to fight it. And some people poke the bear and they end up on the wrong side of the fucking law and they end up with their ass in jail. So there is that risk. You have to be willing to take, I guess, if you're gonna be one of those people. And unfortunately, like you don't see a whole lot of people going after the tax loophole advantage individuals because they're all the ones paying off the politicians to make those loopholes exist and continue to benefit from them. So I think that's on both sides of the fence, though, and not going to get fixed over this conversation. But at the same time, it's important to acknowledge that both sides of the party have problems in our country and probably many others. So it's something that we can acknowledge and realize, but also not just sit on our hands, right? We all have contributed to things like the Last Prisoner Project to help lobby for good cannabis laws and get people out. So um, as much as there's much larger forces on the opposite side, we're still not making our voices silent. We're starting to be heard and starting to have more success and continuing to have laws move, I think, in the right direction. So it's not a lost cause or a lost fight. So that's one thing that often I do see, whether it's on X or Instagram or wherever, people posting about, especially in an election year, 2024. I don't want to get into the whole politics of it, but just the idea that people think that their voice doesn't matter, their voice doesn't count, and I just think that that's not the truth necessarily. Maybe at some levels, but even then, you should at least try and exercise your right. Voting is important. That's how we get the laws into place. So if you want to vote for cannabis laws that will, better fit you and your family and your friends and your needs, then I think that's something worth considering. Doing the research. Who are the candidates that support the policies that actually will make a difference in your state or country? Because we've seen it go in the wrong way and we've seen it go the right way, and there's a lot of in between. So it's important just to, hold these people accountable. Call them up. You'd be surprised. Like a lot of people think that they're not actually accessible. They're humans. A lot of them are, a little bit corrupt or bought and paid for or whatever. But you could be one of those people greasing those wheels, even if you don't have the dollars. A few minutes on the phone, if you just sound passionate, if you're like, you tell them your story. Hey, I'm a veteran. I served X amount of years, and this is helping me with my PTSD. Or this is, and this isn't me speaking. I'm just saying like examples of other people that I've talked to that have talked to their congresspeople, but just even myself. Like I say, I'm a small business owner, and I help people here in your local community. I've been paying taxes. I do a lot of positive around this area. I volunteer. I help others, and on top of that, I also use cannabis and I also grow cannabis. And I think that we need to defend the right to home grow. And I can tell you that a lot of these people that are demonizing it still here, like in California, they compare it to like hard drugs and stuff. And it's just, there's still so much education that needs to be done. So, yeah, I think make your voice heard for sure. And don't be disgruntled if things don't necessarily go your way every single time around. It's not going to.
Don't feel
Most
bad
people disagree.
Yeah, don't feel bad if you call them and you get their staff because you think, wow, I'm not talking to them, but you're talking to the people that they talk to every day. So don't turn your nose up at the staff of a politician, because the staff is actually sometimes better to talk to than the politician, because they're more of a real person, what I like to say. They don't put on that mask. They're not so comfortable wearing that mask so much, and you can connect to them on a human level. It seems like to me easier. And the same thing if you go down to their offices, you tend to interact with their staff first. And if you stay good with them, and respectful with them, they tend to you'll grease the wheels and get you in to talk to the politician, maybe a little bit better. So yeah, don't turn your nose up to the staff. That's my only thing I wanted to kind of tack on to the end of that one, Jack.
Oh, for sure. Because I think sometimes people underestimate how much that some of those people actually pull the strings. They're the ones setting up the meetings and holding the schedules, and like they're keeping this person on track. I mean, people talk about like shadow governments and puppets, but it's like this is more just like a secretary or a helper or assistant. Like these people have so much insight and control into some of these higher ups' lives. You'd be shocked. And if you, like Spartan said, are nice to those people, maybe even there's a line the next time and there's two or three people in front of you. But then that staff member goes, that guy was here the last three times and he's been wanting to talk to you. I know like all these other people are in front of him, but like I've seen him come three times or whatever. Like let him speak to so and so. Like you two or three can talk to the staff because you've never been here before. We'll hear you out about your ideas. We know what he's here for. He wants to talk to him about that. And he wants to hear his opinion about that. And he wants to know if he's going to support him or not. You have to really put it into the terms that they care about, because your vote to them is your currency. They want you to donate. They want you to volunteer on their campaigns and stuff. That helps too. But if you say, I'm not going to vote for you if you start fucking shitting on cannabis or following all this stuff, like the MCMA was saying that home growers are dangerous and they're going to burn homes down. If you start parroting this stuff, we're going to come after you. Not just me. Like it's going to be me and thousands of other growers that care about this, that it impacts our lives. It, you know, will be a hellstorm to be paid if there's not, not like violence, but just vocal opposition and people that will vote you
Yeah.
out.
I mean, that pretty much was what birthed the Michigan Weedsters in the state of Michigan, which is now an organization that you can get a membership to, which I would recommend you do if you're in the state of Michigan. It's only $4.20 for the year. But and now we have a rally every single year, which we got the next one coming up September 12th. It'll be the third year in a row to talk about things like that.
Well, and that stuff matters. People like to brush it under the rug because it becomes normalized and part of the culture, whether it's like Seattle Hemp Fest or these big cups or these big come-togethers, Emerald Cups and things like that. Like, granted, they might not be as pure as they once were or as cool or as fun or the crowd or whatever, and they might move places and they might change philosophies and they might be a little bit different than it was the first year or the thing that got you into it. But ultimately, it is a thing that's withstanding and not being erased and wiped off of, Instagram or Facebook. Like many of our pages and accounts get deleted. Books, like I tried to publish 50 Strains of Green to Amazon, it would not let me because the cannabis content and other issues. So it's like we as a cannabis community consistently face censorship and our stuff being taken down, deleted, ignored. So if and when we can, making our voices heard and having those big assemblies, it might have been 100% the first year and then 200 or 500, it might have been 1,000, 10,000. I don't know what the numbers are, but it doesn't matter as long as you start something and then keep at it. I think that you're eventually going to be recognized for that movement and the consistency. People, like, they've been in politics for years. They appreciate, oh, this person's consistent. They came to me a year ago and they still care about this. It's not just a fly by night. Oh, I'm going to get through this election and then they're going to forget about this stuff. Like, no, if I turn on these people, they're going to turn on me. So they have to, you know, be held accountable, and it's on us to do so. And it's not always fun, but it's one of those things that I think we have to talk about. And if we don't, we won't have the right to grow. We've seen it come under attack in California, in Michigan. I think Oklahoma had a few runs at it as well, but almost every state, and we don't even have to like pretend or imagine, they've already done it. They've outlawed it in the past. We're fighting the prohibition that exists from the 1930s to the 70s, et cetera. Like we have nearly 100 years now of cannabis prohibition and rhetoric and things to overcome and fight. And we're still marching the right direction, but it's not over.
It's a hard thing to remember for people like us that are in this space, is that we have the knowledge. We know, you know, cannabis is healing power, and what a lot of the smoke that we were fed by the government is just that smoke. But what's crazy is that the common person doesn't know that. And by common person, I mean common police officer, common prosecutor, common judge, unfortunately, common lawmaker, all these people that it can affect our lives, and they don't even have the right information. They don't even have the correct up-to-date information. That's why I always say that I think that our biggest struggle as a cannabis enthusiast is just knowledge.
Washington State, where I'm at, we had our medical limit on what we could have at our house cut from 2.5 pounds to 1 pound, and they were trying to cut the plant count from 15 to 8, and they had a big protest, and they didn't get through with that. They were trying to cut it down to like, I think 4 ounces of all you could have of dry usable at your house, but they settled on 1 pound, and we still don't have home grow. You can't grow if you don't have a medical card in Washington State. It's one of the only ones that have it. So, yeah, being proactive when it comes to home grow is a thing that I would be recommending to people in states, because you have to have a medical card and a medical reason to even grow weed in Washington State.
That's wild. And I've even seen fractures within the cannabis community of some people think that like they want it to stay at medical use and they don't want to go towards the adult use or recreational because they feel that then the medical side gets sort of brushed under the rug and then the patients don't have the access to caregivers or the medicine quality maybe that it was during the medical cycle, like here in 215 or in Michigan during the caregiver days. I'm a little bit in between on
We
that
still
one.
have, I think on that particular issue, because I hear the same thing here in Michigan as the medical shrinks. But you know what? There's still why do we depend as the cannabis? I mean, as the cannabis community, why can we say that we want the government to help us in one aspect but not in the other? To me, it's like, if that's the case, if what you just described is the case in your area, then it's time for someone to do. You don't have to put the fucking caregiver hat on, but you can still be a human. You can still fucking take extra out of your bro and give it to somebody who you know needs it. You don't have to have a fucking, official title. So to me, I think, well, yeah, you don't have to be an official caregiver, even in this state where it's illegal to be one. You don't have to officially be one. There's plenty of people in Michigan that I will. It's still very legal for you to gift. You know what I mean? Which is the same thing a caregiver is basically doing. So, yeah, even if you're not wearing the title, you're not wearing the uniform. It doesn't mean you can't do that. It doesn't mean that's illegal. You can still just, as an adult, gift to another adult. Have a heart. That's 100% something you can do, and that's just gonna make cannabis look better, right? Because here's this grower who's helping out his neighbors who need it, who are sick. Yeah, we should continue to allow people to grow at home because there's people like this out there, that kind of a thing.
Well, generosity is rare in a time of scarcity. I think a lot of people are stretched thin. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of difficulties with financial things, and a lot of people still, and I think rightfully, look at cannabis as a value crop. Whether it's the same value that it was in the early 2000s at 7, 8 thousand a pound or not is definitely not up for debate. It's gone down, and it likely will continue to, depending on quality. But if you have really good quality cannabis, I think that people almost universally that have tried it and enjoy it would say it's worth some money. And if you give that away for free, it's almost like handing somebody cash or handing somebody a little chunk of gold or a little chunk of silver. It's a very valuable thing. You could go on, pass it off to somebody else, and they would enjoy it too. They could use it themselves and benefit from it. And to just do that out of the kindness of your heart, even sometimes to a perfect stranger, like some guy that you bumped into at like the Home Depot or something, like, hey, try this joint. I grew it myself and it's really good for pain relief. It's like, oh, thank you. Even if you don't even see the end result, just knowing that like good deed. Um, there was this, and granted, I hate to give like a big commercial company or whatever. I think it was like some yogurt or some sort of brand. It was like do one thing. It might have been Kashi or something that's like pass it on. It's like somebody dropped their phone or their wallet or something. Somebody picked it up for them. And then like that person went on to help somebody else. And that person went on to help somebody else. And I love that kind of positive domino effect because we see it on the negative so often, right? You see somebody get cut off in traffic and then they're pissed off and then they go and speed and get a ticket and then they yell at the cop and then that cop's having a shitty day. And then he goes and fucking beats somebody down the road or something. That's like there's a negative spin that can happen too. A whole chain of effects that's negative. Or you can have a positive chain of effects on people, whether you know it or not. It's like putting out that good activity into the universe. I think the whole idea of karma might be more logical, I think, than some people give credit to. It's like if you do good things for people, then usually those good people come back around and help you out. Not to say that no good deeds go unpunished or whatever, but
Well,
there's a
I've altered. I used to always say that. I used to always believe in karma, but I've moved past karma so much, and I now believe. I can't remember who first told me, but somebody had said that you do good things so that there's good in the world, and I thought that's the best way to put it, because you're guaranteed that there's good in the world because you're doing good things, right? So you're spreading the goodness. So you can guarantee that there's good there still.
I always like the being kind is free because it's fucking true, man. And it's so rare now. It's like how often do you just see somebody who's like generally just out there like being kind, like just nice. You don't even have to like help people, just like, hey, how's it going? Wave, smile, like be friendly. Like in such a crazy time, like, and it depends on where you're at. There's plenty of places I am very lucky to hang out around where there's lots of beautiful, awesome, smiling, happy, positive people everywhere. But then, like, if you get on the internet too much, or if you watch TV too much, or if you go to the wrong bar or social setting, people will get aggressive, I guess, is no lack of any other better way of putting it. When there's the option for peace, that I saw another one that going to kind of platitude quotes, but it's like, why do we wait till we die to rest in peace? Why don't we live in peace? And I think that there's something to that. And my general skeptical thought is because they always kill the people that advocate for peace, like Martin Luther King or, Gandhi or RFK, many others, JFK. I think all these people that advocate for peace end up getting killed. And I think certain industries hate that individuals advocate for peace. But I think that it's our moral and ethical duty to continue to fight for peace and love and spread positivity and happiness and unity, because it's, I don't think it might be a finite resource. It might not be unlimited. I don't think that, you know, you have to be feeling a little bit good to reach to that place. I don't think people when they're down in the dumps and feeling shitty, hurting, in pain, starving, struggling, are as ready and willing to open up and be generous and be helpful and be kind. But when you get into a positive place, like when somebody helps you, that's why I think that good deed getting passed on, like do good so that there's good out there. And then other people can see, oh, well, fuck, he did good. So that made my life a little easier, a little positive, more positive. And then it gives those other people the sort of ability to, or even just the thought to like, hey, why not? Why the fuck not, right? Why not pop a seed? Why not send some seeds off to some people? I've got to tomorrow for the shout out to Let's Be Buds, that 60 packs in 60 minutes or something like that, 90 packs in 90 minutes or something. Can't remember the exact
60
details.
and 60, man. 60 packs in 60 minutes from 60 different breeders and 60 different winners.
It's good stuff. Mine's going to Canada, which was a little bit of a, I wasn't expecting, but you know what? I'm gonna get it there. So it's going out tomorrow.
Yeah, I gotta pack mine up too. Send those out tomorrow.
Shout out to Uncle Rick and all the people that were involved with that, because getting people seeds, again, going to those kind of acts of generosity. If you can make them, if you are able to store them and you grow them out and you find, hey, these are pretty interesting. I like them. Tell people a little bit about them and share them, you know? I don't
Well,
think that,
it's one another creative way, thinking outside the box to meet our goals. And one of the goals of our show is home growing. You know, we kind of focus on that. And what better way than to get genetics out there that we know are good genetics, get them out there to people who will be able to grow. So that it was kind of win-win. And we also fucking raised a shit ton of money for Last Prisoner Project. I think with the match, it was like just shy of or right close with $6,000. So so, and that's just from people donating. There's no donations required to win, but people just out of the kindness of their heart donated that day. And
I think it
yeah,
goes up to like a 500,000 or $1 million or something that Dutchies matches throughout the year. And they, it's not just
yeah,
us, it's like a bunch of groups that they work with to hit this goal. Like they continue, they go around looking group to group to group to like,
the
who can we help fundraise with?
cool thing is we about got them up to their 1 million. They're at like I think around 20,000 or something away.
It's amazing, man.
Yeah,
That's a huge commitment. Like I said, we have power, even if it's a small amount in numbers, you know, like the politics. A lot of these donors like the little, 10, 20, I don't want to call it little, but even like a $1 donation from a billion people or whatever is $1 billion, right? So it adds up quick if you get a lot of people giving even just a small amount, and that can make our voices amplified, and that can help the people that we, I hate to say it, but at least on my end, I complain about hearing that there's people locked up in prison. So like, what do I want to do to help? I don't want to sit back and complain. I want to actively be able to help, lobby and direct to get some of these people out, advocate for better policies and laws, and just making sure that people know about it, because a lot of people still don't know about it. It is, unfortunately, as much as $1 million is amazing, there's lots more that can continue to be raised and will continue to go to good use until literally every single person who's in jail for cannabis is out.
yeah. At the September 12th rallies here in Michigan that the Weisters put on, I usually get to speak. I've spoken at every one so far. And I always try to close that speech, or at least mention within a speech about, look, guys, it seems like, it's been forever since 2008. It's been legal medically, that it's just legal, and it's almost second nature to walk around with a joint, not a big deal, worry about it. But there's still people that are literally sitting in jail, rotting in jail for doing those same very things. It's legal now, but we just forget about those guys. We just forget about those girls that are, you know, behind bars. Why? Because they're locked away. We really need to pressure our politicians to get those people out, make it easy, not make it like, oh, I got to fill out all this paperwork. No, it should be like, oh, you're in jail for nonviolent cannabis offense. That is expunged from your record. If you're serving time for it now, you are released as soon as possible. It shouldn't be that difficult. They've done it at other states and other jurisdictions. So that's one that's near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's just crazy that, out of sight, out of mind is a concept that the prison systems actually take advantage of for all individuals who are locked up, but especially like nonviolent cannabis offenders. If you're not seeing from them or hearing from them, or they're not on the news, they're not getting the coverage that whatever thing going on overseas will. It's not going to get the same clicks and views necessarily unless we as a community say, hey, we can't stand for this. When I see that, I need to figure out who that is locked up. I need to figure out how I can support them. Maybe it's writing a letter. Maybe it's adding a little to their commissary. Maybe it's donating to Last Prison Project, or all of the above, if that's an option for you. And even if you can't, like I said, just using the time to educate others, educate yourself, and maybe create one of those pen pal relationships. Because if somebody is going to be locked up, I know entertainment, like just having COVID the past few days, distracting myself a little bit when I'm feeling like, even though I've had a very mild case of it, there's times where you just feel a little bit crappy and you're experiencing, feeling like shit. And then you watch a, funny video or, TV show, or listen to a song that you like, and you get that like little dopamine hit and like that distraction, and you're just really tuned into it. You're not even thinking about how much pain you're in. You're not even thinking about how uncomfortable you are. And I imagine to some extent, when these people get those letters and they get to escape a little bit in prison, they can read and think about that. Like some of these people, I know individuals who've been locked up, and they talk about, they save these letters, they bring them out, and it's like those are their best friends for the rest of their life. Those people that stayed in touch with them. Like they're like, you kept me sane. And I'm curious, Brandon, because you've been on the wrong side of the system here in California. Did you have any communication with the outside while you were locked up? What was it like being a victim of the war on cannabis there?
Let's see. So my first term, I did not have a whole lot of communication with anybody. I just kind of went through it and just did my thing. The second time, I had a bunch of money put aside, so I had my girlfriend at the time, um, send me books and that kind of stuff.
And I'll just ask, and I think it's probably obvious, but that first time compared to that second time where you had little contact or no contact at all, compared to when you had contact, support, and even entertainment, like a book to read, how did those experiences compare one to the other?
Well, they were completely different. So the first time I went to prison, I think I was 23. So I was really young. I had been to jail a couple of times already, so I kind of knew the get down. And my dad had been serving, time since 96. And so when I went in there, I went to, Donovan, but I knew all the key holders and shit because of my dad and some other people that I knew. And so they already knew who I was. I didn't have any issues with anybody. And then I went to like a low level camp, like a private. It's no longer operational. I think it was called. I can't remember what it was called. CCF Baker, and it was like they had different dorms, and it was a kind of an open campus. You could walk around. There are different TV rooms there. I mean, it wasn't as far as like if you're gonna be locked up, it wasn't as as bad as some of the places. Um, but in the second time, it was weird because California passed a law where the prisons weren't going to take any nonviolent offenders anymore. And so what the sheriff department did, well, they're like, oh, well, we'll just build more jails and we'll house all the nonviolent offenders. And I didn't know that that was going to happen. So I spent 18 months in county, and county is way worse than prison because county is just like meant for holding for short term. And so you get less privileges. You don't get nearly as good commissary. You don't get contact visits. You don't get a lot of the things that you would get if you were in state prison. And so the 18 months was way worse because I spent most of it at George Bailey, and they call that place the Thunderdome. And I've been in fucking race riots. I've been in all kinds of fights. I did the thing. So
Well, and it wasn't like you were a gangbanger. It wasn't like you were a hardened criminal. Like your dad had some history or whatever, but like you were just selling weed, growing weed, maybe producing a little bit of BHO, or like manufacturing is I think what they would term it. But you weren't a killer. You weren't getting wrapped up on assault charges or, anything like that. So that The fact
Well,
was you were a nonviolent offender and they still held you in the county. So people, when they hear, like I did, oh, all nonviolent offenders are going to be released from state prisons when Prop 64 comes around,
that's not
we
what they
need to
do.
look more into it because I didn't know that people like you were getting shipped off to county and
Well,
spending longer terms
I
in
was
worse conditions.
I was locked up when Prop 64 passed, but because my charge was manufacturing, even if it was cannabis related, it wouldn't have mattered because they didn't have retroactive sentencing. But I can tell you this much: when it comes to jails and prisons, they have the logistics of incarceration down very, very well, and it's very profitable. So they use inmate labor for most of the activities when it comes to the manufacturing of like 15,000 meals a day, all the laundry, all the labor, the work, whatever it is, whatever possible task you could think of, they've got somebody locked up in there that knows how to do it, or that they can show to do how to do it. And so, it's kind of like institutionalized slave labor they run the system on, and it's very profitable.
Well, it's like literally, a lot of people don't realize this, but when you get a felony, you're no longer a citizen. And so you don't have the same rights. Like you can't vote. A lot of people know that, but they don't realize you don't have to get minimum wage. So they're paying these people like 5 cents an hour, 10 cents an hour. So it's like as close to actual slavery as you can get without being slavery because they're technically getting a few cents an hour, but it's
And so
nowhere even
you look
close to
at
minimum wage.
$3.50 a week. And so what they do is like you'll get a welfare pack every single week if you have less than $2 on your books. So they'll give you soap and a toothbrush and toothpaste and things you need to fucking keep clean. If you make more than $2, so they pay you 3.50, you have to pay for your own stuff. So essentially you have to buy soap. The soap's more than $3.50. You're spending all your money every week, or you're saving your money just so you can get necessities. And then I was the lead commissary. And so I saw the pricing for the things, and they make fucking like tens of millions of dollars on the commissary because one, it's all run by inmates, and then they buy huge bulk at very discounted prices, and then they up price it, six, seven, 800 times. So it's a lucrative business. Don't get me wrong, there are people that I've met in there that definitely needed to be in there. There are people that need to be incarcerated, whether because they were violent criminals or just because they had some type of, mental handicap that made them like an unacceptable person to be in society. So I don't know. I think that it just needs to be reformed. I think that a good way to look at it is to look at um not as a profitable business, but actual reforming people and turning them into productive citizens that have skills and trades that know how to, operate in society. Right now, what we have is a system that's built to create recidivism, and so people keep coming back. They took all the trades out. They take all the classes out. They'll say that they have classes. Oh, we have a parenting class, or we have this, but they're really masked as these bullshit things that don't actually do anything, just so that the jails can say, "Oh, we have programs."
We check that box and we'll get the funding that comes across with providing education to the inmates, but it's garbage in a lot of the cases, like you're saying. It is
Well, where's the
extremely
welding?
unfortunate.
Where's the auto mechanics? Where's the trades that people can get out and be successful with, where they can go get an actual fucking job where they can make money instead of having to go, makes fucking whatever it is, fucking $10 an hour working at fast food or some shit. And a lot of
Well,
times they won't hire you there because they're like, there's other candidates here. Tons of people apply for jobs. So
they call prison con college a lot of the times because you literally like you might get wrapped up with something unfortunately, but then you go in there and you're taught literally like the criminal underworld from everybody else who might be career criminals, people that are in and out their entire life. And I do think that there is a time and a place for people to have to be locked up, maybe for life if they're extremely dangerous, etc. And like Brandon said, if there's mental health issues, like those need to be addressed, whether it's in a psychiatric facilities or
I
prisons
mean,
if they are acting
I've
violently and don't have, people to
I've
regulate them.
I played pinochle with killers. You know what I mean? Some of these people that are in there because, and like, here's the thing: after a while, after you go to jail a bunch of times in prison, you start gaining points. So when you go in there, you're automatically housed at higher level. And so I was in, I was in a house with this black dude named Lucky, and I saw a newspaper thing. Like, I don't know, maybe a year later, the guy got relocked up for killing his old lady. And there was another dude in there that just was you just know, like, they're just the way they talk and their demeanor and everything else, dude. You know what I mean? There's some bad people in there that need to stay in there. And I've been around people that killed people while I was in there.
Yeah, it's a unfortunate reality of society is that area has not been figured out 100%. There's a lot of places like I see
Look at
like lock up
another
abroad, and you could see some terrible prisons, and then you could see like some Norwegian one where
yeah.
they literally just let them all out and they can do whatever they want. I watched this one where this US prison is basically trying to emulate like a Swedish one where they basically just let all the inmates out and have security like behind the doors and let them run the show basically themselves. And for like the first 2 weeks, there was like not a single fight. I was shocked. Eventually, they started fighting, and it was like little, but when that would happen, they'd send the security guards in, break it up, and like they'd have it all on video and be like, "All right, we're gonna step in as needed." But they're trying to give them more trust because, like you're saying, eventually, if you give people no responsibility, treat them like pieces of shit. Granted, some of them are gonna act like that, and it's rough, and a lot of them end up right back there, and a lot of it is cycles. Like your father was in there, and a lot of people whose parents are in prison end up in prison as well. Just statistically, if you take Brandon out of the situation, that's just historically, factually accurate. And so there's a lot
the
of
the majority of people, it's not race, it's based on it's a class system.
socioeconomics, 100%.
Essentially, the people who aren't paying taxes are the people who are getting locked up. That's what you can actually see. That's what it comes down to. And I've analyzed it in a bunch of different ways because the people that are there are always the poorest people, or the people who are just like, on drugs, which they're usually poor because they spend all their money on drugs and they're fucking just beat. But a lot of times, what you'll see is that the majority of people that are in there aren't like criminals. They have mental health issues because they're drug users. There's a lot of people who are like petty thefts, and those thefts are deal usually because they're fucking poor and they're fucking stealing so they could, get something they needed. And don't get me wrong, there's like, again, there's people that need to be in there, but the majority of people, the I don't think incarceration is really the answer. I think it's giving somebody a skill set like gardening.
One of my buddies, one of the first people I got hooked up with in the Instagram community, he got robbed at gunpoint, and he like slammed on the gas pedal and ran the dude over, but then he fled the scene because he was scared, and he like didn't call the cops, so he ended up getting like a manslaughter charge, and he did time, and he ended up learning gardening in there, and like grew like thousands of pounds of food for all of the local inmates, and I think they even donated a lot of it to local food shelters and things like that because they grew so much. And now when he got out, he's like growing his own cannabis and grows his own food for his family, and he's made a living. But a lot of people are not like that, unfortunately. Like it's many don't get any sort of skill picked up. um Maybe it's not available, or maybe they don't think to dedicate that time to it in such a difficult situation. I wouldn't blame them
So
not
you're
having had to be
if
there.
you low income, you can just teach yourself. I mean, there's so if you have access to the internet, then you can pretty much learn just about anything. I mean, you can learn how to rebuild a 350 engine. You can learn how to do welding. You can literally learn anything step by step on YouTube. And even
Right.
like, dude, you could teach yourself, like, you could get a PhD level worth of knowledge off of the internet. Like, if you just dedicate enough time, you could just go on there and pretty much, get a degree.
I'd say
They
the
literally
vast,
give free
I,
classes online.
yeah, I'd say 90% of my knowledge for cannabis come from the internet. It's not like I went to school for cannabis. There wasn't a school to go to.
right?
Yeah. I mean, the best knowledge that I've seen is science white papers where they're using something like a model plant like Airdopsis, and they're testing out different theories and different conditions or nutrients or whatever it is, and being able to apply that same science to cannabis.
I think that's really interesting information, and I totally agree with like almost every field, unless you're going to like heart surgery or some sort of surgery or something where there's got to be like a hands-on applied sort of thing like that. But even like Brandon was saying, you could rebuild F-350 or engines or whatever. You could go on YouTube, and pretty much find all this stuff for free. So it's just really a matter of somebody's time, willingness, and there's an
Yeah, some
inherent
of
amount
it.
of intelligence. I hate to say it. Not everybody has the same IQ or like understanding of how to procure and put that knowledge to use. So there's steps to even that, but I agree for
Yeah,
the most
listen,
part, it's all online.
I was gonna say certain things look really difficult, but when you go to and do it, it's really easy. But you just don't know because that's not what you do. Like for instance, I forget what car it was, but the headlight went out, and I'm like, oh fuck, and I couldn't, just looking at it, I was like, how the hell you get this shit out? Went online, found the thing, and you literally had to take off like the bumper to get at it, but it was like 5 bolts, and then it was real easy, and that was it though. But I had no clue. But you could find out the information. Sometimes that's it. But then if you find out it's a big project, then you go pay somebody. That's all.
Or you watch that video like 30 times and do it real
If you
slow.
can't, yeah, if you can't do it yourself, I'm saying, or if you're not confident enough, maybe then you go pay someone. Or yeah,
I'm with you on that, Tao. Knowledge is power, and if knowing that it's out of your wheelhouse and you have to hire somebody, then you can start to do the research on who's the best person for the best price, or what are the options to fix? Because sometimes there's more than just one option, like you know, just different materials and things like that, or whatever. I saw Noah D grow out on mute there for a second. I wanted to hear if you wanted to jump in.
Real quick, I just want to say I just recently had an experience myself where I was watching the skilled labor. The water main to my house was leaking underneath my driveway. So like I talked to a few different guys and like, well, we can cut your driveway, but really you want to get this like guy with like this boring machine. And this guy came over with this crazy, it's called a ditch witch, but man, I mean, literally a drill. And they drilled 135 feet from my street, underneath my driveway, underneath this huge tree. And the guy was there from 9 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock, and he got $2,700 for doing that. And I mean, dude, it did not look that hard. I mean, I'm sure there was definitely skill to it, but and he was young, way younger than me. I'll tell you that right now. He was in his 20s. And this year, I know he made $2,700. And the guy, the plumbing company that I called told me I got quotes. There was quotes that were like 7,400, and they gave me a quote for 5,700. That dude subcontracted out, and he was there from 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock, $2,700, man. So yeah, the skilled labor, like, I mean, dude, you just gotta like learn different specialized fields out there. You can learn a lot of stuff. Like I said, I'm telling you, if I did that for a couple months, I could do that myself. Like it was not that hard.
Well, I just
So
watched a video today. It was like there's a lot of the saying like you don't want to be a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And then what I never heard before was the second half of it, which said like until you need I'm gonna fuck up the quote. I should probably just find it. But it's like until you need somebody who can, be more than the one. And like this guy was saying, like in his trade experience, he learned how to do like the drywall, he learned how to do the electrical, he learned how to do the plumbing, he learned all of them. Did like 5 years in each. And just saying like in his projects, he was able to then get both contracts. He could do the electrical, and like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I like being an electrician because I don't have to clean up after myself or whatever." And then like the drywall guy comes in and finishes up or whatever. But he was saying that he ended up making more long term by knowing both skills. Not necessarily he had to be the best of the best at every single one of the fields, but he was skilled enough at each one to at least throw his hat in the ring if it was like a simple enough job. Which so often it was like he needed to wait for the electrician to come over because he didn't know the electrical stuff. So then he learned the electrical stuff. And I think that there's certainly a benefit to, having a wider skill set. And it's something that can come with time and effort. And Mike Rowe, who did the show Dirty Jobs, said a stat, and I looked into it, and it's true. It's 5 to 1. For every 5 tradespeople who retire, only one is currently replacing them. We have an 80% gap in the trades. Whatever you're into, water, electrical, building, even destruction, if you want to tear stuff down, there's demolition, there's all sorts of stuff, there's cleanup. I mean, if you want to get physical, or if you can, that's an option out there. Or even the management side, the pencil pushers, the bean counters. We need people to run the numbers and to make sure that all the laws are being followed and things like that.
I can tell you from firsthand experience, like trying to get a contractor that's good. It blows my mind dealing with for one real estate and now contractors to like fix up the place. So it's like, how do they get away with fucking being late or not answer? I've had contractors where I called, had them come out to give me a quote, and then never contact me back with a quote. Like, what the fuck? You don't want money? What is going on? So yeah, it's really raised my eyebrows. I've never experienced this in any other like field before than and for one, real estate. I've had real estate agents not call me back too. It's like, what is going on? But yeah, real estate and contractors, at least here in Michigan, you can really get people in those two fields and step up the game. I think if you did even a mediocre job, you'd stand up.
To correct the quote that I was trying to read earlier, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one, which I had not heard that before. And that's kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier. I think being a grower sort of makes you a little bit of a jack of all trades. You're the IPM guy, you're the soil nutrition guy, you're the plant nutrition guy, you're the, temperature control guy, HVAC guy, you're the flooring guy, you're the everything. If you want to make it cheap home grow, DIYing, doing it yourself saves you money. You're in for the cost of materials and your own time, getting tools and things, which you can rent, by the way. A lot of people don't think about that. Sometimes if you rent a tool, it is way cheaper than buying it and then just having it sit around your house. Uh, and granted, you might think, oh man, I don't want to pay to use a tool one time, blah, 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 if I could just buy it and have it forever if I need to do that job again. If it is something you're going to do again, maybe buy the tool. It's good to have tools. I like tools. I love tools, actually. In fact, that's probably something that I could end up hoarding as I go older and older. I'm like, oh, the right tool for like Noah said, that guy with the ditch witch who fucking went under his driveway, he probably made that shit super easy. It was probably the exact, I bet, like I've looked at certain digging and drilling bits and there's fascinating science and engineering and technology that goes into that stuff. It is really cool shit. But some people literally just have way better equipment than the other people. So that one guy was probably giving an honest quote with his 7,500. He might have fucking dug literally with a shovel under there, right? With like a team of three. And then the other guy's like, oh, I have this little tool. I can do it myself in a couple hours. I'll knock it out. I'll drain the water and I'll be out of there in no time. It's like, there's levels to this shit, right? And
Dude, he had this on the back of his truck. He had a trailer and he had this crazy like tank for like water. And I guess the ground underneath mine was really hard, so I had to refill it with the hose. And numerous times he had to stop, and he was like, "Yeah, I got to stop and let this drill bit cool down." Just the drill bit for that machine was 10 grand. So, like you said, dude, it was crazy. I got a little clip of a video I'll share in our group chat. This machine was nuts, and the stretch that he did, and then like he was like, "Yeah, it was a doozy," and then it's like, "What do you mean it was a doozy? You were out of here at 1 o'clock." Like, man, crazy.
yeah, but you said he made 2,700 bucks on that job, so he does 4 jobs and that drill bit paid for itself, right? So I mean, that's under a month of labor for something that will probably last him a year, maybe, or
He
6 months at the least.
he literally said to the guy that was in charge of the job that subcontracted him, "Hey, I got to go do another one later," like straight up.
On the same day. So think about that. Even if he just did 2 a day, that's 2 days of work to pay for a tool that now he's in the green. And that's one of the beautiful things about business and growing, I think really teaches us. And I've talked about this in the past. It got me into like knowing ROIs, and I didn't get a business degree. I didn't go to business school. I didn't know all the fancy, profit loss and this and that. And it's like, you can Google this stuff. You can watch. And shout out to Brandon Russ. He did have to get going at the hour. He messaged me just about a second before he jumped out, so I wasn't able to let him give his final thoughts and shout outs. But support him if you can. BokashiEarthworks.com. He's got lots of cool products over there, and the Bokashi Seed Vault, if you're interested, got cool seeds and even clones that drop from time to time. So Brandon's got really fire shit. If you're interested, check out Bokashi Earthworks for sure.
And he's a wealth of knowledge. And I just want to say it sucks that he didn't get to hear this, but man, I was absolutely fascinated hearing his stories. I've wanted to ask him several times. It was really cool that he opened up. I bet the audience totally dig that. That was absolutely fascinating hearing that. I had a person close to me that was just incarcerated on a drug charge, and it was fascinating watching it. And I heard the same kind of stuff about county being crazy. And but I mean, yeah, it was fascinating to hear somebody on the panel talking about that point of view. It was one of the more riveting conversations that I've listened to on the show in a long time myself personally.
And it's just, it goes to the fact that it's very real. This last Prisoner Project thing, it's like, it's not us just talking about it. Like, that was Brandon's real life. When I met Brandon, and I think it was 2018, he had just gotten out from, I think it was his second time. I can't remember exactly. But like, he came over on 420 and we were like fucking tie-dyeing shirts in my driveway. And he was telling me these stories. And I'm just like, that's so fucking wrong, man. Like, I looked at California as this like utopia. Being from Ohio, I'm like, it's the weed wonderland. Like from 96, they have medical. I'm like, there's no way they're locking people up for it still, right? And it's just like the expectation versus reality sometimes can be two different things. And not to say that there wasn't a thriving cannabis scene. There was. That was a gem. It was a green rush. It was almost like the gold rush happening all over again here in California. Like people literally moving out here, starting businesses, and still are. People are making, successful livings, whether um, big businesses, small businesses, whatever. It's great to see stuff thrive. And I think that's part of the American way. But the prison industrial complex, as he described fairly well, is a nasty for-profit system. And it can really, unfortunately, take advantage of a lot of vulnerable people like himself and like many others. And I'm really, that's why I like to talk about it, because it doesn't get enough talk. It's easy to think, oh yeah, it's legal where we're at now. We don't have to think about all these people in the red states that are, or wherever it is, whatever color state they are in, that are locked up and being forgotten about because, they don't have the voice that we have to get on the internet and start talking to 1,000 people every Sunday. And so, as long as I've got my freedom and my ability to speak, I'm going to continue to rally behind this great cause. And even when it's not a Last Prisoner Project night or a fundraiser, I think it's important for us to revisit and re-talk about. And I'm like, I'm very happy that Brandon was able to share about his experience, because I'm sure many haven't heard that. He might have told it on another podcast or another place some other time, but it's everybody gets to hear that story. And I think you can't deny like seeing who he is now, looking at like all the positive things he's done. He's literally like globe traveling business hustler, like working his ass off, doing everything the right way. Like I can't find anybody who's like, oh, Brandon fucked me over. I can't find anybody. They're like, oh, Brandon hired me. He's paying me well. Like Brandon, is a great guy. He's friendly. He came and he brought good weed. Like he's fucking nice. He's cool. There's, I think, a few jealous idiots that'll talk shit based on somebody's appearance, which I think is fucking, that's the lowest of the low. If you're gonna attack somebody for their personal, like what they look like or something like that, I think it's so stupid. And people should be ashamed of themselves. And I think that those people are really sad individuals, and that's why they hate from the internet in the comment section on anonymous accounts, and they're not actually out there doing anything. There is a great saying, they'll never build a statue of a critic, which is generally, I think, pretty true. So don't tend to worry about those. I end up getting in arguments. Brandon doesn't even give a shit. He's too busy fucking out there working. And then occasionally I'll be like homesick with COVID. I'll see some dumbasses in the comments like, why are they talking shit about Brandon or anybody here on this panel? It's like, have you stepped into the arena at all? Like, have you done anything? And most of the time you click on that profile and it's like, they're just hating on every single other person. Like that's their whole entire X account is negative reply, negative reply, negative reply, hate, 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 hate. And I'm just like, first of all, now I realize some of these are just bots. Like they're actually like foreign people that are coming trying to fuck with us and make people upset and divided. I truly believe that. And there's actually good evidence now to prove it. There's people that are from the intelligence agencies here in the US that have retired to go on to work in private. If you guys have ever heard of the Unsubscribe podcast, the most recent episode, one of their guests, that's one of the things he does. He like exposes these, in this case, it was a guy from Russia, but in another case, it was like a person in America who was misrepresenting their medical background and where they'd gone and their experience. So like, it's really fascinating when you look into a lot of the fake shit that's online. A lot of it is really just, it's not real. That's why when you go outside and you're like, oh, all these happy people, all these cool people, that's really most of what I think society generally is. People are just trying to live their life, have fun, be good to each other. But then there's a few percentage of things that get amplified because they know the big social medias that we come back for the drama. We like the gossip, we like the rumors, the speculation, and hate or violence. It sells, right? Sex sells too, but so does fear. And if they can make us scared and make us angry, then we'll comment and we'll come back and we'll get in arguments with people or whatever. And that's what they want. They make tons of money on that shit.
Yep. Tessnog's in the chat has a suggestion for us for a guest, Dr. Dankenstein. So he's a big voice out in New York. I actually met Dr. Dankenstein in Barcelona of all places, and he's cool as shit. And I would second that. He would be a really great guest, I think, to talk to.
Definitely got to reach out to them because I'm not the best about doing that. Our old host was like, he just reached out to everybody, like myself, Spartan, every single person who's on this panel. Like, hey, come on my show, do an interview. Come on, talk about the people. You know, he was this fucking social Mr. Butterfly back in the day, and I am not as skilled in that regard. I think he really just put it out there, and I appreciated that about that host, and I think that was one of the best elements. I think sometimes of the show is all the different people that they would have on, and admittedly that's something that I haven't kept up on as much, so that is a great suggestion. So I'll definitely reach out and try to continue to have more guests on in the future because I think that enriches the show, brings new perspective. I actually want to start getting onto other shows a little bit myself again as I'm starting to finish up 50 Strands of Purple. It's nice to connect with other audiences and get to know some new people, and always fun to I did a High on Homegrown that we did like the first half, and they thought about releasing it there, but they're like, when the book's ready, we'll do the second half, and then we'll release it all together. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Should be a fun time. But they're good guys over there, and just
Yeah.
I will say, to stay on the politics a little bit on the free speech side of things, looking at the UK right now, this is some scary times, people. I mean,
Yeah.
No, it's crazy. Don't even get me started.
I mean, I think we can talk in general terms, but the fact of the matter is they do not have free speech. People are getting arrested for social media posts, right? That's just a not
Yes.
deniable fact. I mean, I've verified this on
And
both sides.
People are getting serious time for it too, which is ridiculous.
they even got arrested for verbally speaking in a protest.
Yeah,
And some
so
not even speaking, just being there. I think they got arrested for it. So
it's
I tweeted the Prime Minister of the UK and reiterated those exact comments that the person got arrested for because let them try and come get me in America. And now that I say that, they're probably tracking me down. For some reason, my typewriter has been really slow.
our
And then
very
my
first
keyboard,
war actually happened over this, the
yeah,
Revolutionary War.
exactly. I'm like,
So come and take
I
it.
commented on something like I forget how I framed it, but I'm like, and then whatever.
We
Yeah,
stopped giving a shit in
exactly.
1776.
Right. We don't listen to, we haven't listened to you guys since 1776 or whatever.
In reality, like I'm making a little bit light of it, but it just highlights how important going all the way back to 1776, those founding documents were. The very first thing that they wrote, freedom of speech, cannot be taken away by the government. You know, it is
Once you
the right
take
to the
that
people.
away, all the other rights are compromised because they control what everybody can hear. You know, they're
Well, and it's not just speech,
vital.
it's speech, it's press, it's assembly, it's religion. It's I think there might be one more, but the First Amendment encompasses
Yeah.
more than just speech. And speech is applied to what we're doing right now online. The internet didn't exist when the founding fathers wrote it, but guess what? The First Amendment still applies because this is an avenue for us to share our thoughts and our speech in a public platform. And I'm happy that it didn't get regulated away because it could have. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was like Google blacked out for like a week or a few days back in the earlier mid 2000s. It was like this, can't remember what the abbreviation was, but there was some acronym that was going to come create a whole bunch of censorship and it was going to lock down the internet and make it a more secure place. And yeah, the whole giving up a little bit of your freedom for the greater good, but the freedom really is the greater good. So you got to fight for those freedoms. And it's I know I'm probably gonna maybe make a few people angry abroad, but I think most people there are probably feeling the same way. They would wish they could speak, and it's not them, it's their government. And it's a shame, you know, that it really does come down to even like Canada a few years ago, they were arresting comedians making jokes and stuff. It's just like it scares me that some of the world doesn't want their citizens to be able to speak freely because like that's a slippery slope, you know? And that's why I think we again have to keep on fighting because it's so easy to get complacent and say, we've got this freedom. Oh, who cares? Maybe we can let them censor us on Facebook or whatever. It's like, no, fuck that. Get to the one that's not going to censor you. Go on X. Go on the one that's not going to delete you. And fucking
Only you have to remember it's another one of those things. It's like environment matters, right? We grew up in the environment where we had the freedom, so it's so offensive to us to take that away from us. For people who have grown up with never being able to have that freedom,
Uh-huh.
it's like being that lobster in that boiling water. As it gets hotter, you're just used to it, right? And then until it bites you in the ass.
before you know it, you're cooked. And that's not a good place. I really feel for, I need to look more into the history of like the UK and like Ireland and things. I was
Oh,
just hearing stuff recently about that and how the
dude,
whole,
I think the French just arrested the CEO of Telegram, the
fuck,
owner of
dude.
Telegram. But that could be on real
Yeah,
charges. I don't know.
yeah. He made the mistake of leaving Russia.
And also, didn't Andrew Tate get arrested again? I think he might
Really?
have. Yeah,
I'd only heard about the first one.
yeah. I
I
think
don't know
just
about the
recently. I
recent
could
one.
be mistaken, but yeah, if he get released, then why even bother? He got released, That's how.
Yeah, I think it's just important to be cognizant. I mean, like, don't pretend like you're in a country that um has very good rights and freedoms if you
Right.
don't. Like, be knowledgeable of the fact that they're locking people up for cannabis, and then don't tell anybody. Like, all the people I know in the UK, they talk to people online about it from anonymous accounts, well, like Dog Doctor style, or what, he's not in the UK, but like with a mask on, right? Because they can't expose their identity. And that's smart. You should have operational security. You should have privacy. You should have anonymity and be the best that you can. Maybe use private, not private browsing, but like more privacy online to make sure that you're not getting tracked and things like that. Or like I used to, I'd go to the public library and use their computers and stuff like that, and make sure that I wasn't the one being tracked at my house. Um, it's crazy, man. Yeah, the internet is a wild, wild place, and unfortunately, censorship is, I don't think, going to go away anytime soon. There was like, somebody from the EU trying to make threaten Elon not to have like a spaces on X before it even happened, like basically pre-threatening. We think that you're going to have bad speech, so just because some of your users are in our country, we're going to send this threatening letter. And then like it got backed down, thankfully. Like all the other people in that organization were like, this dude's a nut job. We didn't approve that being sent. So the world's not doom and gloom and chaos, but it's up to us to make sure that we continue to, you know, be good stewards of the planet, be good stewards of our neighborhoods, and take care of each other, take care of our cities, states, towns. I don't think that burning shit down is necessarily the right way to solve your problems. If you had a problem in your house, I don't think that would be the first solution that most people would go to. Oh, I've got a little issue with my plumbing. Why don't I Molotov cocktail my house and burn it down? It's like that doesn't fix anything. I've got a plumbing issue. Why don't I fix it or call a plumber, right? It's like a problem solution. I think we overcomplicate things sometimes with our emotions, and it's good times at times to be pragmatic and just do the right thing, even when maybe it doesn't feel good, or maybe it costs a lot, or maybe you don't want to. No, it's okay to overcome. It's okay to turn the other cheek, and you know, some people will get away with shit, and it's not necessarily your job to be the enforcer or uh, justice, jury, and executioner or whatever. I think a lot of people get these personal vendettas, and it's really hard to let shit go. But ultimately, life's too short. We've got to, you never know when your time's coming. We've lost a lot of great people in this cannabis community, and I look around and there's way less here than when I first started. In some regards, of the OGs, a lot of the people that I really looked up to and cared for, and enjoy their work, they're not here anymore. Their work's still here. That's part of what inspired me. Is like, if I'm not gonna have kids, I want to have some sort of something to, leave behind, share with people. And like, I think that breeding cannabis is really a legacy that people can make for themselves. And even if it's just a very small one, of like, that guy was generous and I liked the plant that he shared with me. You don't need to make a fortune off of it. I just think that creating a little bit of a slice of history for yourself that has a positive connection, you know, is something worth considering. That I think maybe often people wait until it's too late, and they want to wait until it is too late sometimes, and then it's not achievable. I think gotta chase after those dreams no matter what your age is, and at the same time, it's never too late. I know guys in their 70s and 80s like still doing my brother graduated with his master's. I saw somebody in their 70s or 80s getting their master's too. They're not letting it stop them that they're older or the oldest one.
Yeah, I think it's usually I think the thing that keeps people from realizing their dreams the most is their own fear. Like I've seen sometimes, multiple times in life, different examples where like I could see the pathway just fucking open up for a person, just easily, just open up for them, and they're like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." I'm just like, "Oh my gosh." Whereas I'd be like doing a backflip if I could do that, you know what I mean? To try to make that happen. They're just instantly, poo-poo it and don't even give it a try. And I'm just like, fuck. What I mean, walking away, that's already saying no. So why don't you try and fail? That's the same. You're in the same spot. Fuck, at least
A
try.
lot of people don't have that perspective,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's true.
I think that they fear that if they fail, it's going to be over. They'll lose everything, and it's so often just not the case. You can shoot a shot, just calculated risks. Don't bet your whole life savings on something that's a 1% odd or something, right? You hope for at least like
Yeah.
50-50 or better in some cases if you're going to make some sort of big move on something. But Spartan, I think part of what you're talking about is it's so easy for us from the third party perspective to like take ourselves out of the other emotional equations and just see it for what it is. And sometimes people, because they're in it, they're living it, they're too entrenched in like what's right here in front of them. In this
Yeah.
case, in Noah's case, it's like a dank ass plant. I wouldn't be able to focus on
Oh
anything else.
yeah.
It's beautiful. What are we, Noah? I see you got scissors too, and I saw earlier you were doing some trimming. It looks like we're getting a little bit of harvesting going on. You're still muted over there, though. You've probably got sticky fingers. Phone's about to turn into a glue screen.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I've never done this before at the same time, but yeah, I just pulled down this one where the gap is right here. That was a dosilato, and now I'm just pulling down some of this Girl Scout cookie. I took some pictures of it. I'm gonna post it on Instagram later. But yeah, I had a lot of fun listening to Brandon's story earlier, and really fascinating hearing that he had an inside view of some of the stuff that they're doing in those prisons. And man, it's crazy that they're putting people in prison and stuff like that for something like this. Just mind-boggling, really, to me.
Especially when it's like, for you and anybody who's got such a connection with it, where you're hands on with it so much. It's just it feels almost impossible that something that we use so regularly could put somebody in ultimately what is like the worst situation on the planet. Like I think some people, and evidenced by their reaction of going there, like they end up, ending their own existence. I won't use the exact term because I think that gets you taken off of YouTube or whatever. But as opposed to going to prison, like they'd rather just end it all. And that's not a good place for anybody to have to be in, that. And not saying that that's actually what happened with the guy whose first name starts with E and ends with Steen. But aside from that, there are people that are, it's so depressing that like that's where they end, whether it's to their own hand or just by, being in there for life. And that's like ultimately one of the worst ways, I think, for anybody to experience their life. There's so much more than those, four walls. And for us, it's so common. But I've got a whole tray of it right here. I've got a bowl sitting packed. I'm gonna put it back in my bong and hit it here and just like not take for granted and not go underappreciated. Even just like being sick, I wasn't able to smoke for a couple days. I had to take a shit ton of RSO, and thank goodness I had it. But and I almost like I try not to. Like, I don't want to stop smoking because I really like the effect of smoking. RSO will get me through, but I still like smoking. So it's a bummer to not be able to for like 3 or 4 days. I was like almost none or not at all smoking, and like if I tried to, I would cough so much that I'd almost like throw up or like spit up like a fucking bunch of mucus, and it's just uncomfortable and painful, and it's not the same thing that I was used to for so long. So it makes you appreciate. Yeah, I hate to say it, but like being sick makes you appreciate your health, and it's important not to overlook. Like, yeah, I was healthy for a long ass run. I haven't been sick for over a year, and this is a little bump in the road, but I'm on the up and up. I was at least able to come on the show. Shit, I thought I might have to cancel. based on how I was feeling on the first day or whatever. And you never know how long it's going to last for and how bad it's going to be. So I will say I'm not taking any of the stuff. I just kind of went au natural, and that's been working out for me. I think if I would have had more severe symptoms, I might have considered other stuff. But for now, I'm feeling good, and there's only so much that I think that you can really do.
Probably that RSO. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, not gonna lie.
The Sacred Terrace says they're
Mhm.
waiting to jump on. They hit the link and they're just waiting in the background.
All right, let me see if. Oh yeah, they're in the waiting room.
I
Didn't even
believe
see
in
that.
the RSO as well.
What's up, Tal?
I say I believe in that RSO as well. 100%. I've been I have access to it now. But that, yeah, man, and like I think I'm must be close to a gram a day now, and yeah,
You
I
shouldn't have
feel
any
100.
cancer worries. I think that's gonna help keep
I
cancer.
feel everything is 100%.
Let me add Sacred Terra here.
So it gives us that beat, that noise when somebody joins, but not when they are in the waiting room. Seems like it'd be way more helpful if they gave us that notification when they join the waiting room, so we could let them in.
It might have, and I might have missed it. I'm
Oh, I
admittedly a
definitely
little.
didn't hear it for sure. I missed it.
Welcome, Secret.
Well, you are here now, Sacred. So cheers. I don't know if you can hear us or if you've loaded in, but how you doing?
Cheers, Jack. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, cheers, everybody. Happy Sunday.
Cheers, man.
How's it going,
Um,
man? Last time we talked, I think you were maybe just starting a garden or thinking about restarting the garden. Is the garden still alive? How's it going?
things are going well. It's actually what my question's about. I'm running into some humidity problems, and I've been combating it with Bassiana and some microbes plus, and like I got a dehumidifier. I'm spraying them topically. Yeah, I'm spraying the fan leaves and stuff, but I'm also watering it in. But just wondering what I can't remember the actual like protocol because I got Bavaria Bassiana, I got the Microbes Plus, I got Bacillus subtilis. Once I can get them, because I also got the surfactant too, the IQ. And I know I don't, is Brandon still here? I don't know if he's listening or not, but
No, he jumped out, but I can
uh,
say I think the reapplication rate is like every 4 days for the Bavaria Bassiana, and I know that um, almost all of his products are pretty good to be using together. There's not like a
okay,
lot of cross contamination issues or risks. Like you could use the BB with the other stuff that you mentioned as well. And I'm 99% sure that they're like a collaborative effect. They're not going to like cancel each other out. And
right.
what's the temperature range that you're running and humidity?
Um, like normally lately it's been like in the 70s, 76, 70, 78 the most, and then humidity's running around 60, 55. But whenever I water, I'll be at like 99% humidity, or if it rains a lot here. The days that it rains, I don't know. I got crazy ass weather, so I don't. It's just it'll be 100% humidity for 2, 3 days in a row, and then it'll be 55 for a week. You know what I mean? So I'm just like I'm dealing with that.
It's tough. I think a good exhaust fan to keep the air circulating and pulling as much of it out as possible, and then dumping. Maybe I don't know if what your lung room situation's like, or um, if it's possible to, you know, dehumidify the general area around the tent, or if it's better to, I don't know if you're even in a tent, but like the grow space, I should say, um, if that has the dehumidifier in it or outside of it. Have you experimented with that at all to see what is more effective? Because it seems like the outside rain is going to be impacting the area around your grow as much or more than the direct inside of your grow if it's sealed. So if you can kind of mitigate it a little bit from the lung room side of things, like start to do the dehumidification process before, like in my house, I have a lot of airflow. So if it started raining outside, I'd get 100% humidity pretty quick. But my tent isn't, the 50, 60 70 range, depending on veg, flour, etc. And if it started to skyrocket like that, I could reduce my intake fan to draw in less humid air from the outside, and then try and actively dehumidify the air. There's like, if you want to go with a non-electrical route, I use a product called Damp Rid, DAMPRID. It comes in buckets. Get the odorless version. You can get like a 5 gallon bucket of it, and as it's exposed to moisture, it turns from like a powder into a liquid, and it removes the moisture from the air. And you could, it's a temporary solution, I think, but I know people like Eco Gardens who used it as like a partial solution for his growing. And in lieu of buying like a better or more adequate dehumidification system, it might help bridge that gap if you place like a few of those buckets around your tent or around your grow space, and then coordinate that with your dehumidifier and a good intake and exhaust fan.
Yeah, I I agree with you. That's the thing. I haven't been using the AC. I've been avoiding it as long as I can. And I got the dehumidifier. I got two different fans going, got ventilation going. But yeah, I appreciate you reminding me about the AC. That was the thing. I forgot about how often to apply, because I was applying like once every 2 weeks because I was trying to stagger in between, but I forgot that. Yeah, thank you for reminding me about that. And then if I may, like you were saying earlier, they're built on our fear. So if we don't give in to fear, and everyone remembers the Magna Carta, which was agreed upon by King John of England on June 15, 20 or 1215, and then after that we had the Declaration of Independence. And then I'm going to read to you because I have the pocket constitution on my desk. So I'm just going to read to you the First Amendment as it's written in the Constitution. And it goes, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So yeah, just wanted to thank you for stating that. And yeah, that's exactly like you said. If we have no fear, we keep doing what we're doing. We know what we're doing, you know. The fear is the opposite of faith. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and appreciate you reading the exact wording because it's important to actually like know it. I think that I'm glad that you have a pocket constitution. I know plenty of other people out there that have them and have physical copies of it because they can alter digital shit. They could, like,
Yeah.
in the UK right now, they could theoretically say that our First Amendment doesn't say that. And I love the way that the founders wrote it. It's so brilliant. They didn't say we have the freedom of speech. They said that no government shall deny, essentially, just like the Second Amendment. It's shall not be infringed. It's not saying that we have the rights to guns for the Second Amendment. It's saying that no government shall infringe our rights to have it because where they came from. They just fought the Revolutionary War. The king was trying to take away their weapons, right? So trying to take away their freedom of speech, trying to take away their freedom of religion, all of these things where they're like, all right, we're going to start our own country that says the country can't make any law that allows them to do that. So it's from the founding an impossibility, ideally, if we uphold. And we've been able to, for the most part, withhold. I think the, Big Ten, the, Bill of Rights, predominantly, pretty strongly through the last several hundred years, and be not always perfect, but a light on the hill that people can look to for democracy and freedom and women's rights and human rights and people's rights. We were one of the first to start ending slavery and giving people the right to vote, women the right to vote, people of color, etc. So as much as people want to poke fun at us about our history, everybody's got a history. Even the land that we live on before us, there was many, many wars. There's this recent idea in history that's being taught in schools now that the people that lived here before us were just all peaceful and they were just living at just beautiful utopia and no war, and it was just beautiful. They just lived at one with the land. Let me tell you, look into the Comanche versus Apache wars, just that one in particular, and then tell me that there was peaceful things before we got here in the 1700s. There was war and death and murder and slavery all throughout history, everywhere. Like, it's relatively recently that we've gained these freedoms everywhere from France, US, etc. And it's spread, which is great. But it really is upon us. Like we've seen South Africa, they had apartheid less than, I don't know, 20 years ago, when we had a similar thing with Jim Crow laws up until the 60s or whatever. So, like I said, no country is perfect. We all have our histories, and it's important not to, sit here with presentism and say, oh, we're better than thou, or the history, all these people are terrible, based on our current logic and understanding. But at the same time, I think it's important to say, we've done some good, but how can we keep moving forward? Not always focus on the negativity and divide, which a lot of maybe some of what we're talking about can be interpreted as that. I think it's just more avoiding that darkness, that chaos, like going like all the way back to like the Dark Ages another time where they literally just shut people's voices down and censorship and use certain things to justify actions that I think in hindsight we can say were not the best for people as a whole. And so important to understand history and acknowledge it and see how we can best use it to move us forward as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. I forgot what I was just saying. Hold on, my bad. What were you saying?
Anybody got anything interesting going on in the garden? I asked you about your garden, and maybe you could give us some updates on what's going on in there, what kind of strains are growing, and how it's going.
Everything's still going good. Everything's still in veg. I got the Amy's going. I found 3 males, so I isolated them. Gonna collect pollen, and then I'm gonna work on my strain that I made 2 years ago. I'm finally testing them out this year. The Urkel Fighters, which is it's Street Fighter times Purple Urkel, and yeah, they're doing really good actually. The ones I got a few of them. Actually, most of them I've been training. Like I've been double super cropping, triple topping, tying down. I'm doing LST topping, LSTing, cropping, even femming. Like fuck, I missed. Doing it all, but just keeping it going in veg for as long as I can. And then I'm at a restriction, so I can't do too much. So eventually I'm gonna do where I can just every maybe like a not a sea of green, but like a staggered flower, and then go from there. You know what I mean? I don't know. I got GG4 going from GG strains. I won that when I was in Italy. Masonic Seeds is who I got the Street Fighter from, and I crossed that a few years ago, and he was doing a giveaway. I won a pack of the GG4. And
He's
then I
a
also
cool
got
dude in the community, man.
some
Masonic.
northern lights going. Yeah. Yeah, Masonic's pretty cool. I'll listen to him a little bit.
I, I met him at where was Barcelona at the Legends of Hedges. That's the first time I actually got to physically meet him, and he was a really cool dude. Um, I just like he's one of the guys that just gives out a bunch of seeds, man, or gets them out really cheap to people. So I respect that.
It's a funny
Yeah,
dude.
he's pretty cool. I watched him try the dried ham. Well, we call it prosciutto in Italy. I can't remember what they call it in Spain, but it's basically like dried ham,
Yeah.
but wild boar. Yeah, and he was all about it. He was like, "Damn, this is good." I was like, "Yeah, that's prosciutto's really good."
Yeah, yeah. Tastes almost like acorny, kind of.
Yeah,
The gaminess from that wild boar meat, man, that might take you by surprise if you're not ready for it. It's interesting though. I appreciate a more whole-bodied flavor. I think cannabis has opened me up to a variety of flavors that I didn't necessarily realize I would be interested in.
definitely. Hey, can I add one thing to about the founders? Just if I can revert. And the reason they are called the founders is because they found these places. If you look at history and his story, history, they say history is written by the victors. And I believe that the founders had a gift of foresight, gift of revelation, some kind of gift. They were able to see what was going to happen now. And when they founded those cities, they changed the history, but the men who actually swore their oaths, who actually cared about our future, They wrote it just like you said it. They wrote it specifically for our time. They didn't write it so that you could forget about it on a tweet on Google, right? But yeah, thank you for letting me say that.
I will say there's a beautiful, rich documented history of us actually constructing a lot of the stuff. There's brilliant engineers who you can look up the names of who built the buildings, who built the you know bridges that they're still creating. I think that we've gotten a lot less beautiful in modern architecture, and it's disgusting the way that we've gone with like the if you go to a modern cityscape, it looks like a hellhole compared to like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Or if you go to like visit Italy, like you were just talking about, like Venice or Rome or any of these old cities where you can see the beautiful architecture. Um, I think that it's not always a continual, progression up. We occasionally do like a little bit of this. I think some of that's stylistically that I'm talking about right now. It's like aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Maybe our really boring modern architecture has some sort of structural benefits and, cheaper construction or more consistent, blah, 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 blah. But I think there's something that's important about beauty in life. And I think that's part of what makes cannabis so important is it's not a thing that can necessarily like when you put it into the vape carts, when you put it into these consistent products where you're extracting it, refining it, and then purifying it so it's 90% THC, 5% terpenes, and 5% other flavors, etc. Um, you lose so much of what makes nature nature, and nature, the beauty of it is if you do that to that cart, you might think, oh, these are the top 10 best things. It's got the THC, it's got the terpenes, it's got the esters, aldehydes. Even if you got the perfect mix and ratio, it's only going to be good for like a day, a 2, 3 week, whatever. Your body's going to start to get strain tolerant to the shit. And then eventually the effect's going to be less and less. And you have to use more and more to get the same effect. And it becomes essentially like a pharmaceutical drug, which essentially is what we're all, many of us, trying to avoid. So it's important to think about with cannabis being such a natural product that season to season it changes. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing necessarily. We should embrace the slight inconsistencies because I think those, although somebody might say, oh, this thing is a little bit better for this ailment or that ailment, there's more than just one variety out there. You can find multiple things that can treat a specific ailment. And we've got this broad palette of colors that we can paint with. So we should make sure that we choose not to just pick the green and the purple, right? We got to go everywhere with it and pick the tall, the short, the fat, the skinny, the wide, the good smelling, the bad smelling, the good tasting, the bad tasting, and everything in between. Because there's so much to it that makes it what it is. If we start to isolate and only like it for the pine or only like it for the sweet or only like it for the gas or only like it for the candy, then we're going to start to miss out on some of those fun, like, landrace tie effects or whatever, or like the tie stick that many, even now, that have access to quote unquote better stuff, testing on paper, would still happily trade it for, a few smokes of some of that stuff from 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think I've actually been arguing this for a little bit now. Like, I think the market has pushed a little, at least the connoisseur market has pushed so far towards terpenes, and that the breeding has been pushed so far towards terpenes, so that's the THC of modern day now. Now instead of everything being bred for THC, which is still very important, I guess. But terps has been a big like focus now. So, and for me, at least with me and my buddy Baked pulling out the Chicom Forge, it's more the high. We're finding that we're chasing, we're eliminating things because the high wasn't there. Didn't matter how tasty it was. If the high's not there that we like, then we're not going to keep the damn thing. So I really would say, like, for me personally, I think the high is the whole point. I'm going into this thing, right? Is I'm looking for this effect. So that's going to be number one. Number two can be terpenes or flavors. You know what I mean? Because it makes that experience more enjoyable. But I'll take some crappy terpenes if it gives me the high I want. So I still would think that terpenes is number two. So I think, like when you said landrace tie, that's kind of interesting to me, just as my breeder mindset would be, because that's going to be an interesting high probably, and that would be something that would be interesting to breed. Maybe wouldn't be interested to like actually grow it in a production system, but it'd be definitely something I'd be interested to try to maybe hit to something that was more productive to try to get that high.
Couldn't agree more. The effect, I've always point to DJ Short, who I think pointed it out before a lot of us, but you're right. I've seen people, and I'm calling it aromatic profile now because literally terpene profile has taken away all the other aromatics. Nobody cares about anything but terpenes. That's why when I talk about methylanthranilate, nobody has said ester to me unless I bring it up. Like nobody has said it. Maybe one time we brought up a research article or something that listed a few of them, but we've gotten just like we were so it's almost like we're looking through a telescope at THC, and then now we're looking through a telescope at terpenes. And we really have to look through like binoculars with less of a zoom, and then like look at like the whole, you know, forest from the trees kind of thing, and realize that it is almost all of it's great, and it's always been pretty great. Like there's so much good in there for so many things, and that's a great thing. We don't need to make it the drug for X. CBD tried to do that. It tried to be, hey, Charlotte Figgy, she has seizures. This cured her seizures. Let's have everybody come to Colorado so that they can get CBD for their kid who has seizures. And some of them, it worked. I was so happy when that happened. Some of them, it didn't. They moved their whole entire life there. I was happy when, like, one of our presidents said, you have the right to try. You don't have to go to another state to get medicine if you want to. You can basically say, I'm signing this paper saying, I know that doctors have a Hippocratic oath, but I've heard about this new medicine or this experimental medicine and it might work for me. So I want to try it. And I don't want to have to move to Colorado to find out if CBD is going to work for my kid. And I think that's a great thing. That was another huge, thing that goes brushed under the rug, that and the Farm Bill that got passed in the past few years that have made life significantly better for people in the United States. So it's important to take those wins and celebrate them. And again, even just talk about them so people know. Like some people don't know that they might have cancer and not know they can try RSO, even if they're in Alabama or some state where it's not legal. You have the right to try. So keep that
Or
in
they
mind.
might have heard or saw an article about RSO, but they have no idea how to take it, and they're just completely, you know, scared to. So the
Where to
knowledge,
get clean.
yeah, the knowledge to go with it. Like, what's the dosage? And what's weird with RSO is the dosage changes. You start off small and you try to get, try to dose up. So yeah, it's just knowledge though. The more I'm hopeful because every year has been better. It's not like we're going in the wrong direction, I don't think. We're going in the right direction. So I'm still hopeful, but there's a lot of work to be done still.
I agree with that. But even like RSO, as much as it gets pointed at the cancer community, I also see it used for cystic fibrosis, for insomnia, for pain relief, for addiction, to opioids, for a variety of things. I've seen it smoked like a dab. I've seen it rubbed on somebody's cancer on their skin, put a bandage over it, and then the cancer goes away. I've seen people put it into a rectal, thing and have to take it that way. And then that helped them with their different varieties of cancers. So it's it's interesting because it's not just one, like a lot of people eat it. Some people smoke it. I dabbed it for a little bit.
I wouldn't do that.
It's
I was gonna say
I
of all
don't do
those
it
things
anymore.
I was gonna say all those things that you mentioned, and there was some eyebrow raising ones. The only one I wouldn't do is dab it.
The term is suppository for the rear entry or whatever, but it is on contact. A lot of people with cancer are found to be the most effective for treating specific ailments. As silly as it is to talk about, I know we don't want to talk about our butts and having things put up in there,
Yeah. But
but
like if I had prostate cancer, that would be my go-to right there. Because you want to avoid the liver. That way you can avoid the liver and get the medicine right to the fucking bloodstream, man.
speaking of prostate cancer, I know we don't want to hear this, boys, but they're saying now doctors are telling men to sit when they pee because it reduces prostate cancer by a huge amount, even starting from a young age, because you get all the pee out. And this is again going back to the All In podcast. Shout out to Chamath Palihapitiya, who's a pediatric doctor, told him for his young boys and even himself to reduce their. I know I'm giggling a little bit, but this is true. You can look into it. Your cancer risk for prostate if you sit when you pee as a gentleman, if you have that luxury. Um, I feel like for most of us, it's like a cleanliness and time thing. Like you're just gonna go to the urinal because there's 10 of them versus like one stall in a men's room, right? Where the ladies just like 10 stalls or 4 stalls or however many. But all that aside, we've come up to the hour where I pass it back to Spartan Grown and let him get his final thoughts and shout outs in before he gets running on over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show.
Thank you, Jack. But they postponed the Michigan Rose Grow Show. There won't be one tonight, but they're gonna make it up Monday night for a late session. So we'll be back for that. So I don't have to leave just yet. But I do want to answer a question that was asked me a while ago
Do it
in
up.
chat, and I don't know it off, but it was basically, it was like, is there something I wish I'd have known before? Uh, I gotta just scroll back up, but basically it said something to the effect of what did working in the industry kind of teach me that I wish I'd have known something before I'd gotten into it. And I probably don't, I mean, obviously it would be nice to have knowledge of things before, but I mean, I don't begrudge my time if that's the question. I don't begrudge my time in there because I wanted to learn going into it. I honestly, one of the biggest thing I learned that was a surprise was like how much different and how much physical work it just was to make that leap, right? To that leap of a home grower to a commercial grower. And not only the ridiculous amount of work because of just the physical amount of plants, but like the ridiculous steps you had to take because of regulation written by people that don't grow. So just things that were, this is the law, this is the rule, even though it makes zero sense, and now it's making way more work for you. So it kind of taught me that like even like even to consider wanting to have my own grow, I'd have to be independently wealthy, but then I'd be independently wealthy. So why would I consider even having the big grow, right? Because I'm already wealthy. I don't. So what's the point?
How to make $1 million in cannabis. Start with $3 million in cannabis.
Don't be the grower. Yeah, yeah. The grower is usually the lowest paid person in the industry when it comes to just generally speaking. The grower, the transporter, and then the seller. The seller usually doubles the price and didn't do shit to grow it.
That's
But
most dispensaries.
yeah, it's insane. So yeah, and then I saw how that there's no, I mean, when it comes to business, there's no uh, honor. There's some people with honor for sure, but there's no like honor in business. Most of the people are doing whatever they have to do to survive. So that could be changing strain names. That can be doing uh, a million different other things, like using the loops of the hemp and the THCA and try to. I mean, I just was reading about a thing that somebody got busted in Michigan uh, because they brought in hemp from what they said was Oregon, but the COA it was tested in Cali, failed testing, and it was THCA from a hemp processor. So and then they have them on camera mixing it into like they had like 5 or 6 buckets of it, 5 gallon buckets. They get THCA from the Michigan market, regular marijuana, Michigan marijuana THC isolate. And they put like a cup of it into the one bucket. They tested the one bucket and they call that the whole batch. And it's just like, God, man. So there's still people doing crap, right? It's like, so yeah, it's not like you're walking into a holier than thou scene, I guess is the biggest thing. Like I thought I was like, ooh, I'm walking into the legal scene and it's gonna be all on the up and up and it's gonna be everything seed to sale tracked and it's all gonna be good. No, it's just the same kind of people, you know what I mean? So you're gonna get some of the same kind of results.
A lot of the same people literally doing the same thing, just in a different framework. Like if
Yeah.
we're being honest with ourselves, like it's the exact same people doing the exact same thing with a few more hoops to jump through now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And a lot of them are like, fuck that hoop. I'm not jumping through that one. I'll jump through 9 out of 10 to make it look like I'm doing, but then I'm going to skip
Yeah.
that really big important one. And you're not going to
Yeah.
know because you're not there. Who's auditing 24 hours of footage to make sure every second looks, it's rare.
Well,
Like
and
they don't
these
have
are
the
the
money.
people, yeah, these are the people that going back to when I was saying I think it was fear that stops a lot of people. These are people that should have fear that don't have fear. It's like the fake it till I'm gonna, make it kind of a crowd. It's like you don't do that with multi-million dollars on the line. That's ridiculous.
Licenses that can be revoked.
Yeah, banned. You can get banned. Like in the CRA has put some lifetime bans on some companies that were doing ridiculous things. So that's like,
Testing facilities. Why the would a testing facility want to risk it? They must have got paid real good by these guys on the back end to put multi-million dollar licenses in California that there was only like 30 or 40 of them for there to be like 10 left and like
yeah,
lifetime bans. We're talking multi-million dollars, long time, lots of lawyers. Like I only know like one person who's gotten into the legal cannabis scene that was like a mom and pop, and they had a big business in San Diego with lots of contracts for general contracting, like construction stuff. So they already know how to work within really red tapey type environment. If you do construction in California, it's like one of the most difficult. You have to get all the permits and everything has to be above all the codes. We have earthquakes and fires, and you have to
Yeah.
build it to a standard that's ridiculous. And that's part of the reason that there's so little housing available here. So, but in so doing, most of the housing is safe and standardized. Like they make sure every single step is the right length and things like that. Like, it seems silly to some, but for like ADA reasons, I understand. I've worked in housing when I was in college. I was an RA for a little bit, 1 year, free rent. That was the only reason I did it. But man, that was a interesting year. You learn a lot when you live with people and you have to work on the physical side of like managing property. And it's eye-opening. I loved all the jobs that I did. I worked in like construction for 2 weeks. I worked in food service for 2 weeks. I did a job in housing for a year. And I just like working different occupations gives you so much perspective. Because if you interface with these things and you've never done it, like I think it seems like a joke, but they're like, you should almost make everyone work a week in a waiter job, being a waiter,
I
just so
would
that
say a
they can.
month. I don't think a week's long enough. A month in each job to really figure out what it's like, at least a little bit.
Right. But however long it would be, it's just like it is eye-opening to put your literally not like thinking about, oh, what if I was a waiter and somebody talked poorly to me? It's like, no, being there and like having to eat shit 3, 6, 10 times in a row because you've got a crowd full of assholes who's a bunch of high school, college kids or drunk idiots who are
Drunks
just
are
going to be
fun.
rude for no fucking reason. And they're going to treat you like shit. And you just have to smile and the customer's always right. And you need to get that paycheck. So you're going to be fucking nice to everybody, even if they're an asshole to you and even if they don't tip you and even if they treat you like absolute garbage. It builds character, one, but two, like it makes you way less likely to, on the other end, I think. Some people go the opposite way. Some people are like, I've been treated like shit, so I'm going to treat my person like shit. I take the opposite approach. It's like if you've been there, you realize how shitty it can be. So then you tend to have empathy for that person in that role. You're like, oh shit, I remember when I was there, you know, fucking humping it, being the guy at the construction site who's like sweeping everything up after all the construction,
Yeah.
trying not to get run over, trying not to get shit dropped on you. Like you start to have a whole lot more respect for some of these fucking people. Like, glad I don't have to do that anymore. Glad that they're doing it instead of me. I'm not gonna poke fun or make fun or judge or make their job more difficult than it needs to be. I've been there. I know
Yeah.
how difficult it fucking is. So
I mean, you just have to also just be a nice person and you kind of cover your bases every time. Just don't be a dick. Fuck. It sounds like it's simplifying it, but no, I mean, that's it. Just don't be a dick. Just be nice.
it's tough. I
Nice.
think people let the other stuff in their life. It's easy to. Things build up, pressures build up. You know, you got to make the bills. You got to take care of your family. You got to take care of, loved ones and animals or whatever your load is that you have. It could just be a, cognitive issue straight up. Like some people just have their own mental things that they have to deal with. Whether it's something as like common as like anxiety or depression, which are very common. So if you're experiencing anything like that, you're not alone and there's lots of resources out there, whether it's traditional counseling or whatever, or even I think stuff like this, I've been convinced more than ever can have positive effects. It's not the only thing, but like throughout the pandemic, I think if not for stuff like this, a lot of people would have had way worse results than they already did. I know like being on here or like fucking talking shit with Eagle or Michigan Bros Grow Show, even if I wasn't like on, just being in the chat, like chatting with people, having something to do when like we were forced to be locked up or not able to go out and do the stuff that we typically do.
Sorry, I was just reading through chat real quick. There was another question that I missed. Somebody asked me if I knew of a good video that showed how to make RSO, how to make your own RSO. Generally, those videos get flagged and taken down, so that you're not going to see too many of them. But I would recommend going to Rick Simpson's webpage, which is phoenixtears.ca, because it's a Canadian webpage. And I believe there's a video on that webpage, maybe. I can't remember now. I don't remember if there's a video on how to make it on it. I think there might be, but if there's not a video, there's definitely a written account on how to make it for sure. And like dosages and how to dose. There's a lot of good information there. A lot of good information.
I second that. And that's another person, if you've got a little extra kicking around financially and you want to support a good cause, Rick has helped literally thousands of people battle and beat cancer through spreading RSO physically, like giving it to people in Canada. He has been locked up for it. He told the medical establishment way before it was legal in Canada, and they had to say, hey, that's not approved here. Sorry, we can't accept that that is actually what did it. We're going to attribute it to other stuff and just move on with our day. But he didn't let that deter him. He went and helped thousands of people, and he wrote a book. And since like I think 20 years later, he ended up having a stroke. What like he got a cancer that could have killed him if not for cannabis, right? And he lived an extra 20 years. So the fact that he's still even alive is impressive and amazing and should be celebrated. But he has a stroke, and some people will bash cannabis for that and try and blame that. Plenty of people have strokes for who knows what reasons. But he is
Well,
currently
science will tell us they're from blood clots, and cannabis is a blood thinner. So I'm not going to say the cannabis did it.
right, but people will try and blame anything. I'll like Google, does cannabis cause strokes? And then of course you're gonna find some article that says cannabis and stroke risk, blah blah blah, higher dose, blah blah blah. And maybe this is me having confirmation bias, but when I do look into the studies, I feel like they don't show me anything that looks any different than if you take cannabis out of the equation at all and you look at general amounts of strokes in people at certain ages across the board. What's the average? How many people have strokes at that age range? It's not unheard of for people to have them. It's within some people's family. They know, oh, my mom and dad died of it. It's like my family has heart problems. That's my family's thing. We've never had cancer in my family. Like of the 50 people who have died, not one has been cancer. But I'll still try and avoid it. I'm not gonna not worry about stuff that causes cancer. I'm not gonna go and smoke cigarettes just because maybe somebody in my family did and they didn't get cancer. Like they're living a long, healthy life. They're the anecdotal case of like that person who got away with it, right? But a lot of people do it and then they do get cancer, and it's like, um, you know, I think everybody should evaluate their own risk circumstances and all that stuff and
It's
make the
all
best
genetics
choices.
too. You see these, I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, not the rule, but you see these people, these long-lived people that have been smoking their whole life since they're like 12 or something stupid. So it's like, is it that bad? It seems like it wasn't so bad for this person.
It's
Yeah, I
definitely a
see
genetic
some
dice
really
roll.
old
Oh.
lady smoking a cigarette, like really enjoying it. I'm like, man, my hats off to that trick.
She might have looked like she was enjoying it, but if you talk to most of them, they don't even get a high off it anymore. They're just like, I'm just doing it to make sure I get the nicotine in my body, and it like keeps their brain functioning and keeps their body functioning. If you look at, I was in psychology and we did fMRI scans of like when somebody hits nicotine and like the activity in the brain versus like when they do it versus when they don't. And people that try to quit, they'll like back into their own mailbox, like 50-year drivers, people that have been driving for 50 years run over their own fucking mailbox in a straight driveway because they don't have the cigarette. And it's just like part of the habit, but it stimulates the brain. And honestly, like some of the most brilliant people, coffee and nicotine are like, I read a really great article a while ago, 50 habits of like, I think it was 5 habits of the 50 most creative people. And like, it was like getting up early, drinking coffee. I think smoking cigarettes might have been one of them, but it was a really interesting read. If anybody Googles around and finds it, you might be interested. But with that said, I think we're wrapping it up, and we'll let it go along because we don't have to worry about cutting into Michigan Bros Grow Show. So we can take our time and give our final thoughts and shout outs. I saw Tao on mute, and I'm going to pass it to you just for a quick thing if you wanted to get a word in there before we close it out.
I was just gonna say, coffee is my best friend, no doubt. I think coffee is good for you. Don't believe what anybody else says. There you go.
Hey, man, that's what I am personally like. Everybody should look into stuff for themselves because I think everybody's a little bit different. Maybe coffee is good for some people and maybe it's not for other people. And I think that everybody has to make those decisions on their own. And that's going back to the whole freedom thing. That's one of the beauties of freedom is that, you can make the choice yourself. And I'm very thankful that we still have it and we get to choose what we put into our bodies or not put into our bodies. Uh, if you're in a fortunate enough circumstance to be where we're at. So with that being said, it is about the 6 o'clock hour here on the West Coast, which is when we wrap it up for the show. I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown, who got to join us for an extra 15 minutes tonight, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I wasn't prepared. My dog, I have a pug, and he cannot cannot breathe in the warm weather, so I apologize for all that if it comes through. He's been making some crazy noise this whole show. I've been on the mute button though, so but no, shout out to everybody in the chat, man. I'm a little disappointed. We only got one person that stepped up today, but thank you, Sacred Terror, for stepping up. At least we had somebody step up to come talk to us. Man, it's like nobody loves us anymore, Jack. But other than that, just much love and keep growing, everybody.
Always great having you, Spartan. And I agree, maybe people are just a little bit stage fright, or I think sometimes they're just busy. And I didn't like announce in advance, like, hey, next week we're gonna do the open panel. Some people try to set aside time if they know that they're gonna have to physically be somewhere or able to talk or show their garden. I was happy Noah got to show his garden as well. Always great to have him show off the garden, and especially during harvest time. So I'll pass it next to Noah the grower.
Yeah, I had a great time. Great show. Fun listening to everybody. And yeah, I'm still just trimming away here. I'm No Other Grow on Instagram, and I'll see everybody next week.
Great having you as always. And next, I'll pass it to Sacred Terra. Sorry, I kept you waiting in the thing. I guess the sound didn't come through my headphone, or I just didn't even notice the whole waiting room setup. Zoom's changed so much, and I'm a little, admittedly, not my sharpest right now with the getting over the cold or whatever. But that being said, it was great having you, and you could let the people know where they could find you, or any final thoughts and shout outs.
Hey, hey, don't be sorry. And just want to thank you all. Spartan, love you too. Love everyone in chat. Shout out to Tao for the Amy Aces. I got some mails going, gonna collect some pollen. And then with your coffee, just one final thought about coffee. Sorry. Your coffee, the problem is what you're adding to your coffee. The sugar and the creamer, the artificial starches. Because when I was in school for nutrition, I learned about how what most disease is caused from immune system failure and malnutrition, dehydration, not properly lubricating your body with like natural oils from vegetables and olives, avocados, etc., stuff like that. But cancer, my belief is that cancer is immune system failure and radiation poisoning. So if more people believed in their immune system, just like with the RSO, I've cured many different ailments in my body, and I've been making medicine with RSO. But yeah, just want to tell everybody I love them. If you want to check me out, I'm on Instagram at Sacred Garden Miracle, and then I'm on YouTube at Sacred Terra.
Great having you. Thank you again for coming on and chatting with us. We always appreciate when people come up for our little bit of an open panel. And last and certainly not least of the panelists this evening is the American one.
Jack, as always, thanks for hosting, and thanks for Sacred Garden for coming up, Sacred Terra, and thanks to the panel, man. It's always good seeing you boys. I was like kind of freaking high, man, today. I kind of I didn't speak too much, so it was probably a good thing. But anyway, I'm the American one, and the American one underscore with underscore Keens on the IG. And yeah, it's always good to be here. Shout out to Chad. Yeah, it wasn't even in there really, hardly any at all either. So we love you anyway. Sorry, everyone in chat. And yeah, we'll catch you next week. Peace out.
How is this like all this freedom talk? I can just sit back. Like, this is what America's all about. I am the American one. So this is Tao's show, even though he was just stoned and chilling in the background. But we appreciate that. And anybody who joins us, whether it's a panelist or guest, we always enjoy everybody's time and appreciate it because time is limited. It's one of the, I think, most valuable, if not the most valuable things that we have in life is our time. And what we choose to dedicate it to is really who we become. And be thoughtful with your time and be thoughtful with what you do. With all that said, I've been Jack Greenstock, as always, your host. You find me on Instagram at Jack Greenstock. Jack underscore Greenstock's my backup account there because they delete stuff. I don't really post much, but I will answer DMs and stuff over there. I use X more, Jack underscore Greenstock, where I will post this very video tomorrow at some point. And it'll also be on all the podcast platforms. So thank you all so much for listening in for another week and really look forward to coming and hanging out again with you. Hopefully a little bit healthier next week, a little bit sharper, a little bit clearer. And maybe we'll have Matthew join us and we'll get more into some of the science again. And we'll see what you guys want. Maybe we'll do a little straw poll and reach out to the fans. Keep your feedback, what you want to hear about. I always like to keep you all engaged, whether it's Q&A, science, or specific grow topics. I know we've kind of bounced around and gotten a little bit off the grow track a little bit, but I think it's important at times that, we won't be able to grow if we don't have some of those freedoms that we talked about. And the reason we're even able to talk here to just nail it home is because we do have that freedom and never let it go. Peace and love, y'all. Catch you next week.
Peace. Have a blessed week.
Keep growing.